What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Commentary for you, Ryan Moody, Jimmy Smith. Rarely do we have like some type of in-depth conversation, but we screwed up the last show that you guys will hear next. So we actually did get a little bit of insight into what we feel about this. Obviously, the big news this week, Jon Jones, Francis Ngannou. It seems to me like they were trying to get the fight done and negotiations fell through. There's mixed information, but if nothing else, we know that financial compensation couldn't be met and the fight will not take place. So, Jimmy, overall, how does this make you feel?
Not surprised. A little disappointed because I wanted to see this fight. But I'm really not surprised that negotiations kind of broke down the way they did. Not surprised at all.
It's interesting because, you know, in a sport that generally gives and gives and gives to certain fighters, whether it's Brock Lesnar, Conor McGregor, Ronda Rousey, we generally see what a fighter wants, what a draw wants, a draw can get. And I think, obviously, there's people, whether they think Jon could win this fight or not, most people, I thought, wanted to see this fight. I would love to see this fight. I'm disappointed we're not seeing this fight at a time where, you know, to be honest with you, we're having fights that we want to see. You know, there was a guy, Tony Ferguson, was supposed to fight. What was his name?
I keep forgetting.
I forget either. I think there's just a fight that we wanted that we didn't get. I don't know why.
It keeps not happening.
Right. Well, why? Why does this keep happening? So, you know, here's the thing with this fight in particular. I think there's a lot to be said when you have two people that are really well known in terms of MMA. Jon Jones is Jon Jones. And, you know, I think the other thing that concerns me is he could retire tomorrow and his legacy is intact. What more does he have to prove? Francis Ngannou visually is one of the most intimidating fighters we've ever seen from a physical standpoint, from the story. This guy, you know, his life was almost that of a movie. It transcends reality. And, you know, this is a guy that has power like we've maybe never seen in MMA. So to have those two collide is such a insane visual, right? Think back to, you know, UFC 1, UFC 2, where you see those styles clash. I think this could have been one of, if not the last moments. You know, maybe you saw this a little bit with Frank Mir, Brock Lesnar, maybe a little bit, right? But we just didn't get a lot of these opportunities to see these visually striking fights. And it's sorry that this one couldn't be met, but of all reasons, at a time like this, for financial purposes.
I see this partly, too, as a symptom or as a byproduct of something we're going to see a lot more of, I think, in the coming months. The UFC being the only sport around right now, the first sport back, the only sport really on television, gives them a tremendous amount of leverage. And they're not getting any live gate. Let's keep this in mind, too. Their line is going to be, look, we're losing money. We're not losing money. We're not making as much money. So we're not giving anybody the big bumps that we might give them under normal circumstances. Now, you can argue all day whether or not that's true, but that's the argument they're going to make, right? Well, we're not making gate, guys. We're not making gate. So, you know, we're not going to be spending a ton of money. Oh, you don't like it? Test free agency. Go out, see what you can get from Bellator, who's not having any shows. PFL, who's not on until next year. Go ahead. We're the only game in town, and we're having a show every weekend. So the UFC is in a unique position. The bigger the brand gets, the smaller the strength or the influence or the whatever you want to call it, the juice of any one particular fighter. And the UFC's brand, being the only ones around, is stronger than it's ever been. And the byproduct is they can tell any fighter to go F themselves. Now, who knows? And you and I are in the same position of like, we don't know how strongly this all was worded and exactly what the hang up is. And if it's that big a deal, we don't know these things. Okay. But the UFC's ability to say whatever they want and demand whatever they want has gotten even higher. And I saw an interesting tweet recently that said if fighters were going to unionize, last month was the time when they could say, hey, look, like, you need the money, you need us to keep going. And, we want more money. We want this, we want that. You haven't had a show in 6 months. Endeavor is breathing down your neck to get something done. I know it's not 6 months, it was less than that, but you're under pressure. That would have been the time, right? For fighters to get together and go, hey, we got them by the balls right now. And they didn't. So what this partly is the UFC's influence getting stronger and stronger and stronger because they're the only game in town. And this is a byproduct of that. It doesn't matter how big you are or whatever your deal is. If we decide that you're not worth it, you're not worth it. And you can't make us. So the UFC's brand has gotten stronger, in my opinion.
60 hours of recording together, and this is the first time I can distinctly recall using the terms bump and juice in the same dialogue,
Bump
and it has
juice,
to be
bro.
with Jon Jones. I swear. It's ridiculous. It's the biasness. Just here's the other side of that, though. Let me flip that around. When there's no live gate, right? When there's no one to come to the arena, how else are we going to buy this, Jimmy? On pay-per-view. So if you have two big names, a fight that people want to see, something that visually strikes you of the one people, maybe it is one person, that looks at this and says, Jon Jones, there's no way he can beat this, mountain of a man. And I'm going to buy this. I'm going to finally see Jon Jones take the beating that I've wanted him to see for the last 30 years. And then you've also got people that Jon Jones can, do whatever he wants to do. He can drive his car into a pregnant woman. He can go shoot some guns outside of a homeless person convention. Whatever he wants to do, and they're fine with it.
A convention of homeless people, and
so, it's intriguing to me that you would have had both sides. Other than a McGregor fight right now, in all sincerity, what would have pulled more than this fight? You could bring Ronda Rousey back, and less people would be interested. This seemed like one of maybe GSP comes back. Even if GSP came back, I don't think it's the same topic. I don't think it's the same push. I don't think it's the same energy. I'm more excited for that fight than I would be. Are you going to tell me that you would be more excited about Ngannou and Stipe or DC than you would against Jon Jones?
I would love to see the Jon Jones fight against Ngannou. I would have loved to have seen that completely. I'm just saying, when the UFC decides, for whatever reason, you can argue they made the wrong choice. That's fine. They made the wrong choice. They should have made this fight. Whatever you want to say. That's fine and dandy. But if they decide not to, can't stop them. You can't. And that's what this really highlights more than anything, is that when they decide to put the brakes on something, they have more leverage than they've ever had. Because they have we're not getting a live gate. We're not paying what we used to or whatever. Apparently this broke down over money. We're not doing this. And I'm sure the fact they're not getting live gate was their fallback. And they're the only show in town right now. So their brand is quite strong, right? So, like I said, I don't think they made the right choice. But once they make that choice, it's hard to get around them. It really is.
I just think the other side of it is, at this point, give as fans, give us what we want to see, right? We don't ask for a whole lot. We support your product, as much as we can. You're right. Scott Coker's over there with what? $100 and a stack of Denny's cards. He's not going to lure everybody over to Bellator right now. You're out of your mind. What's the harm of just giving in and giving us these rare, I don't want to say super fight, because it's a good fight, but it's not a super fight in the traditional sense. When you're not going to reward your fan base with what they ask for, and you're going to break down over, please don't tell me, holding up a division, right? With what we've seen other fighters get away with. I'm not going to mention names, but I'm sure somebody in the comment section will. Or you're going to make it about, money. Like that just seems so trivial. For them to come out and say, oh, money's the problem. Really? Money's the problem? Because as far as I'm concerned, you've got the market cornered for decent fighters, even to your admission. So what are you worried about? We're going to go buy a Bellator paper. Oh, that's right. We can't buy a Bellator pay-per-view. We'd have to buy a whole network to watch that. It just seems like an unrewarding way to treat your fans when you've got fighters that want to fight, you've got fans that want to see it, and you don't even have a long-term negotiation. That just seems like a bad way to handle business. I'm sorry.
It was weird to me, and I didn't really understand it. I thought it was kind of a no-brainer, and it doesn't really diminish either guy that much should he lose. Of course, I'm sure they don't want Jon Jones to lose, but if he did, he lost to a heavyweight who hits like he stole something from him. He wouldn't lose in his division. Even if he got blatantly knocked out, you still have him go down to 205 to defend his title again. And there might be okay, maybe he's lost a step and the challenger's finally going to catch him. It might make the unbeatable Jon Jones considerably more human. Although I thought, the last couple fights have made him look human. It wouldn't really diminish either guy that much, So I thought it was a no-brainer too. I'm with you 100%. It did seem like a weird choice, but the UFC doesn't like being dictated to by anybody. It's almost like if it was their idea, they would have done it. But it seems like since Jon Jones and Ngannou kind of came up with it, that they were, they wanted to kind of show who was boss, and they're always going to win that pissing contest. So I don't know what went on behind the scenes, but I'm with you. I would have loved to see this fight, and I think it made a lot of logical sense for every party involved. But it didn't happen. Now, and I want to say too, this could also be a ploy where Jon Jones wanted a ton of money. They said no, and then, oh, fine's not going to happen. I'm going to leave. And then, we see these fights sometimes come together anyway after both sides settle down. So I wouldn't say it's dead in the water yet.
Well, I do know one thing. It would have been nice to see it. But if they think that they're going to give us Damian Maia Anderson Silva as a parting gift for not seeing that fight, they're sadly mistaken.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
Well, no, we're not going to see, Jimmy. That's the whole problem. It's the whole reason we did this show, because we're not going to see this fight that we want.
It could still happen. That's all I'm saying.
The hard part, the hard part is getting the two guys to agree to fight. In this case, you had two guys that practically were begging to fight each other because confidence, in one case you've got a champion, in the other case you don't, but really would have been a fun fight. Like you said, hopefully we can all, well, we know what happens when we hope for what things can happen in this whole MMA bubble. But you know what? Who knows? Maybe you were right. Maybe you were onto something. Maybe Scott Coker does have Scott Coker. Maybe he's got what Jon Jones needs practically in his last name. So who knows? Maybe he has some non-drug testing Bellator fights that he can put together for Jon Jones, and Francis Ngannou could do what Francis Ngannou wants to do. I just would not want to see this go long in the tooth. Don't give me this fight in 5 years. Give it to me today, right?
I think they'll strike now if they're going to make it. I really do. And that's one thing we don't see often in the UFC is guys kind of having these fights way past their prime. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We never saw GSP Anderson Silva. We're not going to see it now. We didn't see it then. We didn't see Anderson Silva, Jon Jones. It's just, that's the way it goes. So I don't think it's that. If it doesn't happen now, it's not going to happen.
But Jimmy, power's the last thing to go.
Ngannou can be around for a long time. That is very true. That guy could be around for a long time.
Well, love to know what you guys think about this. Were you looking forward to this? Are you disappointed, or do you not care because Jon Jones was involved? I know he's always a topic of people who just are opinionated. I would say, would you think Jon Jones probably, as far as any fighter right now, active roster, other than Conor McGregor, Jon Jones evokes more emotions than anyone else?
Yeah. He's one of those, for sure.
True.
He
true
pushes
emotions.
Buttons. Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, I really believe he does.
Covington gets people upset, right, and frustrated.
But he's trying to. He's trying to. Jon Jones just is that guy, 100%.
True emotion. Even, I know Chael took a jab at him today, but even Chael isn't. an actual disgust with a person, right? I know people don't like Chael and some of his shtick, but he's really turned that back around and made himself into one of the most successful people in the whole industry. But you really find people actually genuinely dislike Jon Jones as a person, which is rare. You don't normally see somebody in any walk of life that is not liked for the person he is when they haven't probably had any physical, interactions with him, haven't met him, shook his hand, talked to him. You've met Jon Jones. I've met Jon Jones. Seemed like a nice enough guy. Just does some really, really, really dumb shit at really, really, really bad time. He is the epitome of wrong place, wrong time. If all this is just circumstantial.
Well, yeah, but it's also the king of bad decisions. I think that's come back to bite him more than once.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been outside a homeless person convention like Jon Jones has, but apparently you can be there with a loaded weapon while someone else is shooting firecrackers and it wasn't you. Yeah, I mean, really, it's really a cautionary tale of where not to be and when not to be there with Jon Jones.
100%. The story of his career.
Story of his life, Jimmy, not just his career.
Yes.
With that said, we appreciate you guys checking this out, and we will be back very shortly with more commentary.